How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the Cassette Tapes channel. I'm MickyT. This is Nostalgia, and welcome to the first ever classic album review that we're going to be doing. And you saw I'm sure if you're a fan of the channel, you've seen the weekend album review, and we mentioned that we are going to do some classics. Well, now we're doing that, and the first classic that we're ever going to be doing is the third album from the legendary grunge and alternative rock band Nirvana. They're entitled In Utero. And in Utero, I think it's an interesting album to tackle first because, Nevermind is the album that Nirvana are known the most for. But to be honest, In Utero is probably my personal favorite Nirvana album. And there's many factors that play into that, but I think I'll hand it off to you first. What do you think, first of all?
Well, when you look at Nirvana's impact in the 90s, the thing that to me stands out and the thing that's the most impressive and interesting about the band is how they managed to break out on a mainstream level in a way that no bands, in their genre or their style or any band nearly as raw as them ever managed to. They're as far as general radio listeners and the general public were concerned, the band was just brutal. They were raw, ferocious, angsty, and just loud as fuck above all else. And when it comes to what was on the radio, that is for sure true. But at the same time, when you kind of take a look back at Nevermind, you do see that it had a lot of very polished aspects to it. It had a lot of pop sensibilities. It was very cleaned up production wise, and I think it was delivered in a way that it made it very easy for the average listener, regardless what their background in music was, to gravitate towards the angst and the sound of the band. Um, However, In Utero is a lot more, just it took a lot more risks in my opinion, and to me it feels like an album that sounds more akin to what Nirvana as artists wanted to release. It kind of dabbles into the very raw, just gritty, just kind of unhinged at times nature of their debut, and it presents it with the experience that a band like Nirvana had at the time. It wasn't their debut anymore; it was their sophomore album, their major label sophomore album, and you know it was released at the height of their popularity. And I feel like that added perspective mixed in with the very raw and gritty quality of the album, akin to again their debut Bleach, is what makes this such a complete album. You kind of get the best of both worlds with Nirvana. I think the music is fantastic. It is as you just very unapologetic, in your face, at times just so raw and just so out there, that it definitely ruffled a few feathers when it came out. But at the same time, I think Steve Albini did an amazing job production wise to kind of capture the energy of the band without really interfering with their sound or with anything. And just, as a producer, he just has a gift for being able to, capture very raw and just gritty sound and just capture the band's energy seamlessly without, really stepping on any territory that the band wouldn't otherwise go into, or just obstructing any of the values of the band's music and energy. So yeah, I think everything here kind of feels more complete to me. It feels like the more complete album, more rewarding album. It just also personally just I think appeals to what I personally like in Nirvana's sound. I like the grittier sound. I like the just more unapologetic nature of the album. I like a lot of what is going on In Euro, and that's personally why it's my pick of the bunch when it comes to Nirvana.
Yeah.
I'll take it back to you now.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree with everything you said. Those reasons alone are why it's my favorite Nirvana album. And generally, I just want to go back to the sound of this album first because in many ways it kind of feels like it takes over some ideas from say Bleach and Nevermind, but it has its own identity in Nirvana's discography for me at least because this album is way it's gone back to their primal roots, their more raw roots, while bringing in a bit of like noisier guitar work and a lot of just very unhinged like sounds and things like that. Basically, Steve Albini tied this album together well for how noisy and aggressive it is, and there are tracks on here that do still maintain that somewhat pop sensibility that Nirvana had on Nevermind. Tracks like Penny Royalty and Heart Shaped Box come into mind with those aspects, and even the track R Word Me as well. And generally speaking, behind the scenes, uh, this album was described by the people who first heard it and engineered it as just unlistenable in a sense because of the way that it was recorded. But it just feels like that. At the time, I guess people were just in the seat behind the scenes were just expecting Nirvana to put out another Nevermind and to just make another mega hit that sounded like Nevermind. But in reality, it just feels like the album that Nirvana were looking to make. It feels like the
Mm-hmm.
album that, but it was their vision. It was their creative freedom that allowed them to do that. And Steve Albini, tied that together well. And like you said, let them work away with that space
Mm-hmm.
and let them do what they want, which in the end, we did get In Utero, and in my opinion, In Utero is their best album. It's my favorite one, easily. It feels like the finished product, and it's easily the most rewarding Nirvana album, in my opinion, because there's a lot to unpack in the album.
Mm-hmm.
For obviously lyrical content as well, takes a lot into it, and it's kind of hard to avoid talking about what ended up happening to Kurt Cobain. About nearly a year after this album came out, because a lot of the lyrics are just very indicative of what Kurt Cobain was doing at the time, how he was feeling at the time. But it's also just a reflection on Nirvana's fame as well. I mean, the album literally starts off with the line, "Teenage angst is paid off well. Now I'm bored and old." Like, what a fucking way to start it off.
Mm-hmm.
But like, generally lyrical content, it's probably the most raw Nirvana has ever been lyrically. They're always a raw band lyrically, but this one just takes it to a different level, and it's more personal for Kurt Cobain as well. And I don't want to get too much into all that stuff, but for now, I guess just the sound of this thing and the way that the lyrics tie into it make this probably one of the rawest albums Nirvana ever made, the rawest even. And
Yeah.
just the way it kind of ties together is great too. And it's just a very rewarding album, even going through all of the track lists, because it has some of the best songs that Nirvana have ever made as well, when we take that into consideration. And some of those come in the form of tracks like "Serve the Servants," or no, "Scentless Apprentice" as well, "Heart Shaped Box," "Dumb," "Penny Royalty." A lot of it is just fantastic, and "All Apologies" as well. That's probably,
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion, the best Nirvana closer. That's all I'll say there. And yeah, just generally, this album is just fantastic in my opinion. It's one of the most rewarding albums in that of the '90s, I would say. And generally speaking, it's just I appreciate it for just generally how just raw it is and how they managed to make this raw sound like just burst through with so much rewarding material.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head there. It's
Hmm.
yeah, it is. It's the real deal. It's the most Nirvana of all the Nirvana albums, in my opinion. It really is, quintessentially what the band is all about. But with a new perspective that obviously on Bleach it wasn't a big label thing. Uh, Never mind, the band never could have, even though it did land a major. It was released on a major label. It did kind of have money behind it. I don't think even the band could have imagined just the outreach that album would end up having. That means In Utero is really the only studio album they released, in that mindset, in knowing what it's like to be on top of the world. And when you look at how personal and how just unapologetic, and again how just out there, and just not trying to fit into any norms, or not trying to appease to anything the music is, it really is quite a unique album, and a fantastic one in my opinion. It's yeah, it's my go-to Nirvana project for sure, and it always has been.
Yep, I will absolutely agree with you there. It's my personal favorite Nirvana album. Do you have anything to add on top of that? I personally don't. How about you?
Now we can just move on to our favorite and least favorite tracks.
All right. So my favorite tracks from In Utero include "Scentless Apprentice," "Heart Shaped Box," "Frances Farmer Will Have Her Revenge on Seattle," and "Penny Royalty," and "All Apologies" as well.
Hmm. I
Least
limited.
favorite track? I don't have one.
Yeah, I limited it to three. My three favorite tracks on In Utero are "Serve the Servants," "Scentless Apprentice," and my personal favorite Nirvana track, "Francis Farmer Will Have a Revenge on Seattle." And again, I don't have a least favorite track. Every track on here is like at least an 8. So final
Yeah.
scores.
Uh, is it right to final score classics?
Maybe you can
I'll give it a
decide.
9.
I like Teddy say 9.
Yeah, there we go. And yeah, I suppose that's going to be it from us. Thank you so much for checking out today's review of In Utero by Nirvana. What do you think of the album? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? Please let us know why. I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions. Necessary links will be in the description to our own individual channels, as well as other episodes of the Tape Podcast and our Discord and, of course, the Patreon. So, yeah, with that in mind, I've been MickyT.
I've been Nostalgia.
See ya!
Peace and love.